Okay, so like I said before, this is part two of the lesson that we started last week, and we started talking about what the requirements was, the principles, and the things that were needed for a teacher last week. This week we're going to speak on teaching of the family. Initially, I wanted to jump right into this message, but I knew that before going into that, it was key that as a teacher, even of our families, as men teaching our families, and as women, or I'm sorry, as men teaching our wives, and as women teaching the children, that it was important that as a teacher you understand the responsibilities of a teacher and the importance of a teacher. And so I had to dive into that first. Now that we've dealt with that, I want to get into um, how to teach the family and the order of this. All right, so where we're going to start off today is in First Corinthians. First Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. All right, so let's go ahead and start at First Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1.
First Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ.
So this is Paul writing to the church of Corinth, and he's advising those that he taught in Corinth to follow him as he follows Christ. And this is important to be applied between the student and the teacher relationship. You follow the one that you're under their tutelage, or the teacher that you follow him as he follows Christ. Continue.
Verse 2. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinance as I deliver them to you. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is the Most High.
So here we have Paul. He's going into the order of the family, and the order from the heaven down to the earth. It starts out with the father Ahiah, and then he says, and the head of Christ is the Most High. So from the Most High we have Christ, and then from Christ we have the man, and from the man we have the woman. All right, so this is the standard of order for the family being set. All right, so if with that order being established, if any part of it is disconnected or becomes disaligned, then you've messed up the whole line of communication. And one thing that we know is not going to happen is Christ is not going to become disconnected or out of line with the Father. That's not going to happen. So that brings it down to the earthly order, which starts with the head being the man. So when Satan is looking to disturb or distract this order, he looks to knock the man out of. That's the highest he can go, because he cannot knock Christ out of his position on the right hand of the Father. So he looks to work on the man, whether it be through the wife or through children, or go straight attack, hit dead on with the head. If he can't distray or push away the head, or cause the head to be misguided, then he looks to for the weakest part in the link. So when we're looking at the Father, the Son, the man, the wife, and the children, it's like a chain that hangs vertically, and he's looking for the weakest link. The weakest link he knows is not the Father. He knows is not the Christ. So he deals with the human nature. If he can't get to the head being the man, he's going to deal with the woman. If he can't get to the woman, he's going to deal with the children. And somehow he's going to try to disconnect this link to the heavenlies. So it's important, us as men, that we not allow ourselves to be the weak link. And in dealing with the family, if we see that there, the scripture even says that, our wife is the weaker vessel. So in dealing with our wife or dealing with anyone that may be allowing Satan, and not to say that women, are always the cause or the culprit. I'm not saying that at all. But whenever we see that Satan is moving in our homes, we have to acknowledge that, notice that, and know how to deal with it. And we're gonna go into some of that today. Okay, so go ahead and continue with verse 4.
Verse 4. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head.
Okay, and we just looked at who the head of the man is. So who is the head of the man? It's Christ. So if we sit down as we are now, we're studying, we're breaking open the word, we prayed just a minute ago. If we do these things with our head covered, the scripture here says that it dishonoreth the head. And we don't want to dishonor our head. So we leave our head uncovered. Continue.
Verse 5. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head. For that is even all one as she, if she were shaven.
Okay, so now we see, how you doing, sister? Can you hear us now? Today's lesson is dealing with teaching the family. We just went into the scripture showing the order of the family. Go ahead and we'll go ahead and go back, sister, since you're just now being able to get in. We'll go ahead and go back to those scriptures. Go ahead and start with verse 1.
1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. Verse 2. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinance as I deliver them to you. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is the Almighty.
So here we have the order set up from the heavenlies down to the earthly. It has the Most High as the head, Christ beneath the Most High, and then it has the man beneath Christ and the woman beneath the man. Continue reading.
Verse 4. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head.
And we know, just because of the scriptures that we just read, that the head of the man is Christ. So when the man has his head, if a man has his head covered while prophesying, as we are doing now, when we read into the scripture and come together to discuss scripture, or even to pray, and a brother has his head covered, it's dishonoring Christ. Continue.
Verse 5. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head.
All right, and so here we have it going into the woman. Whereas the man should have his head uncovered, the woman should have her head covered, because it dishonoreth her head, which would be her husband, or if she's not married, it would be her father. If she's older and not still under her father's household, then it would be Christ. Whatever masculine figure it is that would be presiding over the woman as her teacher and as her guidance in the scripture, that's who the dishonor would go to. Continue.
Finishing the last part of verse 5. For that is even all one as if she were shaven.
So her praying unveiled is the same as if she were shaven, is what it's saying. And we'll see as we go further into scripture, for a woman's head to be shaven is considered a shame to her head and to her, because a woman's hair is her glory. And it's going to go into more detail on that. Continue reading.
Verse 6. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered.
And as I said, it's a shame for a woman to be shorn. Her hair is her glory. However, nowadays we notice that it's become the trend for women to, be bald headed even. I've specifically in, I see it, well, I see it across the board, but I see it a lot more among the so-called African American women. But I've also seen it with the so-called Caucasian women. But it's become a trend. It just goes to show, along with all of the other things that have come up in the world, to where wrong has become right and right has become wrong. It's nothing for that to be seen. Continue reading.
Verse 7. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of the Almighty. But the woman is the glory of the man. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels.
All right, so now we're getting understanding on why it's important that the woman have her head covered. Because the power that it's referring to here is referring to the authority of a masculine figure or of a man. That's when it says a woman to have power on her head. And as well, it's also referring to literally a covering or a veiling of her head. And it's to cover her from the gaze and the lust of wayward angels. As we all know, previous to the flood, the whole ordeal that went down between the sons of God and the daughters of men. And actually, let's go ahead and go into that so that we have clarity on that concerning this scripture. Let's jump to hold your where you are in 1 Corinthians, because we're coming back. But go ahead and jump to Genesis chapter 6, verse 2. We're going to Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, dealing with the covering of the woman's head. Go ahead, brother.
Genesis chapter 6, verse 2. That the sons of the Most High saw the daughters of men, that they were fair.
And when it's saying the sons of the Most High or the sons of God, it's talking about angels. All right? It's talking about the angels. Continue.
And they took them wives of all which they chose.
And when it's saying they took them wives, it means that they took women and laid with them. Continue.
Verse 3. And the Most High said, My spirit shall not always strive with men, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years.
So the Most High was displeased with this, because it was never meant for angels to deal with women in this manner. And so it upset him that this had happened. Continue.
Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that.
So it's saying in those days, meaning previous to the flood, there were giants. These giants came from these angels coming down and sleeping with the daughters of men. Continue.
When the sons of the Most High came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
Okay, so let's go back to 1 Corinthians. So I went there to bring light to the fact that it says in verse 10, 1 Corinthians 11 and 10, it says, For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. So this covering or this veil is so that the angels can't look down and see the fairness of the daughters of men. And it said, let's hit up another scripture. I want you to continue holding 1 Corinthians. And there's just one scripture I wanna go to in Matthew 24. Matthew chapter 24, verse 37.